Good morning, everybody. Michael the Maven here. I'm going to need your help on this video because I feel like we have a great opportunity to create a rating system that will give you, the viewer, feedback in terms of how usable a camera is. This is something that I've been doing for a while. I'll do usability videos on cameras, and I try to give my thoughts and comments. But one of you, a subscriber, basically made the suggestion, hey, why don't you come up with your own scoring system for usability? Usability isn't as sexy as talking about the features of the camera, but for me, usability matters because you're going to be shooting with this piece of equipment for years. As far as I know, I'm the only one on YouTube who does videos on the usability of cameras. How many steps does it take to do a particular feature? For whatever reason, I'm fascinated with efficiency. I've written 2 books on efficiency. One is already published, and the other one's at the editor now. And this is just something I enjoy doing because when a camera owner gets a camera, it's typically for 3 to 5 years. They're going to be shooting on that camera body. And something that I noticed was my students who had to go through multiple steps to do basic features, they didn't enjoy the camera as much. The camera has a shooting technical side to it, but there's a user experience side of it. And as far as I know, nobody has come up with a system to score it, which is what I'm about to propose. And what I would like from you guys are suggestions in terms of things that I've missed or maybe tweaks. But I will be posting the first Maven usability score on the Nikon D780. It's coming, and I'm going to take this measuring system and apply it to my perceived usability of the Nikon D780. Let me explain to you about the system that I've kind of outlined, and then I can get some feedback from you in terms of how to improve it. It's also important for me to make this video to show full transparency because I know there's many types of websites out there that do scoring and rating systems, and we don't really know how they're coming up with these numbers. The transparency allows me to say, this is how I got it. Here are all the metrics I counted up. If you disagree with something, you could change the score on your own, but it would still give you a pretty good idea in terms of how it compares to other cameras. Now, because there are so many variables in terms of all the different things involved in usability, I had to go through and make a list of everything I could think of. I'm sure I've missed some. So what I'm going to do is when I publish the overall score, I'm going to put the metrics in the description or on my blog so you can see exactly how I counted it. Here's how the system works. The score is from a scale of 1 to 100. So if it's a very high score, it'd be in the 90s. If it's a very low score, it might be in the 30s or 40s. And every camera starts off at 60. With a score of 60, I then add points or remove points based on the different types of features that we see on that particular camera. So the way this works is that I've broken down the primary, the secondary, the tertiary, and the quaternary features into different intervals. If the camera is dealing with shutter speed, aperture, ISO, changing your focusing square, I would expect for that to be a primary feature of the camera, and therefore it should take 1 step. If it's a secondary feature, it might be something like white balance, metering, changing your focusing modes or the drives, things of that nature where you change occasionally but not that much. You should be able to access those features in 2 or less button presses. When we're dealing with our quick menus, you should be able to access any feature within those within 3 button presses. And when we're talking about any feature in the deep menu, you should be able to get there in 4 button presses or less. Another primary feature on a camera, I believe, is the ability to switch between a video shooting mode and a still shooting mode, and I believe it should happen in 1 button press. That's just me. Another bonus feature that I would give to the Sony and the Nikon cameras, for example, would be the rotating power switch around the shutter button. That's a +1 because every time you grab the camera, you can turn it on or turn it off as you're putting it in or taking it out of your camera bag. That changes versus needing a second hand to reach over and turn the camera on. Other penalties would include things like power up lag and things of that nature. If the cameras follow those principles, neither a point is added or subtracted, but if a camera can offer a secondary type of control in 1 step, it gets a +1. If it takes longer or more steps to get to a certain feature, we simply add the number of steps to the point total. So let's say I had ISO and it took me 3 button presses to get there, that would be -2 and it would lower the usability score. The next major feature that we look at is a touch monitor, and there's different amounts of points a monitor can score. If the monitor is touch sensitive for shooting, it gets a +2. If that monitor has the ability to tilt up and down, it gets a +1. If the monitor can face forward, it gets a +2. If it has a touch menu system for the deep menu, it also gets a +2. And in the case that we've seen in some cameras, if the monitor facing forward conflicts with another feature of the camera, such as the hot shoe or the tripod mount, it gets a -1. I've made many videos talking about the left eye problem where a camera may be biased towards right eye users. If that's the case, it gets a -3, and it also gets an R score, which means that this camera is going to be more preferable for right-eyed shooters. Some of the other points cameras can score are for eye relief. If it's nice and deep, it can get +1. The grip can get +1 or +2 depending on how deep the grip is. In the case of very tight grips that you're rubbing your knuckles on to a lens, I might give that a -2. But the main idea is that we have a system of adding or subtracting points based on usability features found in individual cameras. Touch focusing while you're shooting can get a +2. Usable eye detection autofocus also gets a +2. If the camera has a very short battery life, it can get -1 or -2 depending on how quick the battery dies. And if it gets 2 card slots, I'm going to give it a +2. If the camera locks you out of shooting when it's writing to the memory card in terms of buffer lockout, that gets a -2. If the camera has a joystick in addition to a directional pad, it also gets a +2. Every fully customizable button will get a +1. When I say fully customizable, I mean you have a huge selection of menu items and it's not limited to maybe 1 or 2 features. If the camera is heavy, it's going to get a -1. If it's very heavy, it's going to get a -2. So the idea is I start at 60 and I add points for positive usability features and I take points away for negative usability features. If a camera is pretty basic and it doesn't really add a lot of these usability features, it's going to stay in that ballpark of 60. But if it adds 15 or 20 points, then we're starting to get to the maximum range in the 80s or 90s. It's hard for me to imagine a camera would ever get 100, but I wanted to have that range in there. So when I say this camera scored 83, you think of it as an 83% usability in terms of the testing metrics. The beauty of this system is it also allows you to tweak the score according to what you believe is more usable or less usable. You can look at my results and say, well, I don't really agree with Michael on the joystick. I'm going to change this 2 or 3 points. The system also allows us to add or subtract features that may not even exist right now. The touch bar on the EOS R is a really new thing. Some people loved it, some people hated it. I personally thought it got in the way. I'd give it a -1. In any event, I would love to know what you guys think about the Maven usability camera score. Let me know what I can add to it in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and we'll do the next one on the Nikon D780 coming soon. Appreciate you guys so much. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.